What's that?
Start off.
Start with the Parsha. And the Parsha of the week is Shoftim it is. So we have a few different ideas that we can share about the portion of the week. So first of all, it starts off Shoftim v'Shotrim. It's talking about judges and about police is the way that it's normally translated. And one of the ideas that we can take from the idea of Shoftim and Shotrim is the idea that just on a very, very simple level, it's a mitzvah to appoint judges and police. So just on the very simplest level, this is not like a nice to have. This is not in order to keep your society just and
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement from the word of Hashem in the Torah to have Shoftim and Shotrim, to have judges and police. So why? I mean, as usual, it's not like we can exactly say God's real reason for it, but we do have to keep in mind the idea that the fact that it came from God means that they are, there's a holiness to them. They're not just guys and gals who sit on a dais with a black robe and guys and gals who walk the streets with their uniforms and hats and badges. They actually are there to serve a role of Hashem. And it certainly makes you think that if there was ever a country or a society where the role of the judges and the police were seen as the fulfillment of a mitzvah rather than a paying job, rather than, a guy goes to law school, becomes an attorney, and eventually gets to be a judge. Guy goes to the police academy and graduates with honors, but rather that they're fulfilling the role of Hashem in policing the world, you'd have to wonder what a different place it would be.
Yeah, but also they have a certain amount of moral responsibility.
And at very, very high level. Right? Regardless of their training, their morality needs to be that of God's morality. It needs to be. Otherwise, what's the point? So just on its simplest level, we can, if we literally take the translation exactly as it's written, at least we can see it as it's a commandment of Hashem.
Right.
Okay.
In our society, it's very obvious.
Yeah, right? It certainly feels that way. That's right. That there seems to be a lack of the understanding that the role of judges and police is to serve Hashem, regardless of where you are, whether in the United States or in Israel or anywhere. It just doesn't seem to work that way. Okay, so another idea that we get of Shoftim and Shotrim is that these Shoftim that we talk about are a little bit different than there's two different kinds of judges. Let's say it that way. There's Dayan, which is comes from the root for din, judgment. I mean that's the real word, judgment, and these are not those people. So these judges are not the ones that would sit, let's say, on the heavenly court like the Sanhedrin.
Right.
So you've got the heavenly court who understands all the exactly. That's a Dayan. That's who sits in the balance of mercy and judgment on behalf of Hashem. This is a shofet.
Like the civil court.
Right. It's a person who presides over worldly matters, if you want to put it that way, and when you're presiding over worldly matters. Again, coming back to this idea of being holy, like you are responsible for seeing how everything needs to balance out in the world. I mean that's how you've got to see. You've got to look at litigants. You've got to look at testimony. You've got to look at all these broad spectrum of concepts, and you've got to follow an aspect of the Torah law that refers to this.
You've got to be impartial.
And there's a great deal of, like you said before, a lot of responsibility that goes into that. All right, let's go a little bit past just the Shoftim and Shotrim part. So it continues. Shoftim v'Shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. You need to appoint judges and policemen at all of your gates. That's what it says. All of your gates. So what's the idea of gates? So we have a couple of different ideas behind what gates could refer to. So one idea, which I believe comes from the Ari, it's written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, is that the gates are actually referring to all of your senses. So you need to set up judges and police, so to speak, before your eyes, your mouth, your nose, your ears, your touch. So the idea of in this case, for example, the idea of having police in front of your eyes is that you should try to protect yourself from seeing negative things. Right. So, for example, I think we can all agree that generally, especially let's say for kids, watching violence on TV, it creates some type of desensitizing towards that type of thing. So we want the police to help to regulate, so to speak, to police what we're seeing, to police what we're hearing, Lashon Hara. You don't want to be listening to Lashon Hara. To police what we're smelling. You don't want to be overcome by sense that maybe will draw you towards sin. Maybe, I don't know, some perfume. I was thinking ribs on the barbecue, but I like perfume. It's a good one too. Yeah, right?
You're an eater.
And once you get past that, so let's say they get past the police, so now you see violence. So you want the judges to assist you in seeing something in a favorable light. We always have the choice to make. We have the choice to, when we see something, to see it in a negative light or to see it in a positive light. And to really do the work of Hashem in this world, we always want to see things from the positive light. So the police can help to protect our senses from experiencing what could drag us one direction or another to begin with. But if we've gotten past that point, then the judges can help us to judge or see or magistrate over something in a fair, impartial, in fact, even favorable way. And like, for example, like I've heard this idea that, if you're coming up on a car accident, you see the ambulance, right, the police stopped in the road or whatever, it's better not to look. It's better not to think about what's going on there. It's better just to kind of, okay, they've got their job to do, I got my job to do. My job is to keep my eyes on the road. Right. My job is to focus on the good in the world. My job is to think that whatever's going on over there, God is the ultimate judge, and it's not between that's right. It doesn't have anything to do with me. So that is a appropriate way to use the police at your eyes and to judge the situation fairly and properly. Another view that we can have of these gates is that we're referring to all the gates of negativity and all the gates of positivity. So we've talked about this idea many times. The rabbi talks about it all the time. When we were in the land of Egypt, we fell to the 49th gate of negativity. We had to be pulled out of that because the 50th gate of negativity would technically mean the end of the world. And going the other direction, the 50th gate of positivity more or less means the time of Mashiach, right? So the key for us when we're thinking about all the gates of that we have Shoftim and Shotrim at all of our gates is that it doesn't matter where we are in our lives. We can be at the most negative point that we've ever been in our lives. From the aspect of the Creator, nothing has changed. The Creator is sharing His infinite light force with us at all times, no matter what the circumstance is, no matter how many sins we've committed, no matter how many great deeds we've committed, no matter what we've done, the light force of the Creator doesn't change at all. It's only our connection to the light force of the Creator that changes. So therefore, if I can see that Shoftim and Shotrim applies to all gates all 49 gates going down and all 49 gates going up, then it doesn't matter where I am at any given time. At any given time, Hashem is there with me. Hashem's full, complete, unlimited light force is there to help me pull myself back up. God willing, that's what I'd be doing. I'm focusing on that idea, and only through those actions can I bring myself to a higher level, by seeing that God is sitting there with me. And in fact, it even goes a little bit to another step. If I'm able to pull myself out of the negativity, and we'll actually read a little bit about this in the Tanya, probably not today, it'll probably be in the next week or two. There's an aspect of the negativity that actually becomes positive. So it's not just that you're canceling out the negativity, but by being able to have been in a level of negativity and being able to say, but the light force of the Creator is there with me and is going to help me rise up out of here, then in each level that you rise up out of, the light force of the Creator backfills that in order for you to continue to rise up and up and up and up and up. So what you're doing is you're drawing the positive light force of the Creator into a place where there was a void, where there was negativity, where the Sitra Achar, where the Yetzer Hara was sitting. And that brings merit to your negativity when you're able to see it that way. Okay, so that's a couple ideas of Shotim and Shotrim.
Rabbi, his Joshua this morning,
Yeah.
was talking, I understood him correctly, he was saying that there's a certain, like on Yom Kippur, there's a certain level of, I think it was Yom Kippur, a certain level of forgiveness that I mean, to generalize, it was almost like saying that every Jew, whether he's in, whether he's in the shul or is non-observant or whatever, gets a kind of like a free pass on a certain level of what he's done.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, welcome.
Is this the Hebrew reading class?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is actually a Kabbalah class. Is there a Hebrew reading class tonight?
No. We haven't-
There
we
isn't
haven't-
one
we
tonight.
haven't started. Oh, you want to sit on the class and learn anyway?
We have class for about another 25 minutes or so, and then we're gonna daven Mincha and Mariv at I think around 7:15.
When does it start up, sir?
When-
Okay, we're trying to get a group of people together and find out when it's good for them.
Right. So you were saying about this morning.
Yeah,
So he was saying.
I mean, I never,
Right.
somehow that was kind of a new concept for me.
Well, I think I remember part of what he was saying. He was talking about this idea that if you, I think he was saying there was a little bit of a dispute, right? That that on the one hand, people say that the sages say that you have to do everything in order to receive any atonement for your sins.
Right.
On the other hand, you don't have to do anything. You automatically get a Yom Kippur as a freebie. And then I think he said, along comes the Rambam. The Rambam says it's half and half. I think that's what he was sharing this morning.
There was a certain like level of
Right.
Avera.
Right.
You get a freebie.
Yeah, kind of like he called them kind of the light stuff, right?
Right.
So, I don't remember exactly what he was teaching from, but there's this concept that I imagine he'll go over again in the next couple of weeks or so before Rosh Hashanah, and it more refers to Rosh Hashanah than it does to Yom Kippur. Although in some ways, looking at it, it's all just one long holiday.
Right.
From Rosh Hashanah from Yom Kippur to Sukkot and all the way to Simchat Torah and Shmini Atzeret, it's almost like it's just one long holiday. But when you think about the 2 days of judgment of Rosh Hashanah, one of the ideas, and I hope to teach some of this in the next couple of weeks myself, one of the ideas is that you should not be alone on Rosh Hashanah. Because when we stand alone, we stand in judgment for all of our sins. So, and part of what he was talking about, I think it was this morning, part of what he was talking about is that if you look across the room, we all kind of balance each other out. And God judges us favorably as a group when it comes to, the lighter stuff. I mean, if you as an individual have committed a severe sin, you need to find a way to repent for that. And the Tanya is actually going to give us some of that. If the quicker we get to it, which again I hope we'll get to in the next couple of weeks, it'll be perfect. It'll be perfect because we're going to continue. He's going to continue to talk a little bit more about the holy aspect of our soul, and then he's going to go back to the animal soul. The animal soul is the one that causes us to sin.
Right.
And he's going to talk about how we can correct those sins in a very, very powerful and meaningful way. And I think that was part of what the rabbi was kind of talking about this morning is the lighter stuff is where we all balance each other out. We've all got, this person's got a little bit of a light sin in this area, and this person's got a little bit of light sin in that area, and as a group, we're judged favorably when we come together as a community. That's the key. When we at least come together as a community.
Okay, now when we're talking about the sins, okay, are we also at the same time looking at the mitzvahs?
Well, so I am not sure if there's really much of a distinction between violating a negative precept and failing to do a positive precept. I mean, I think both of those kind of go.
I realized as I was saying that that's not what I meant. I wasn't thinking about.
Meaning, do we have the mitzvahs?
Well, I was thinking in terms of
So
the fact that if
do mitzvahs balance our averas?
Yeah,
is
but
it-
that's not the case.
Okay.
We still have to do.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so as I was
Right.
saying it, I
No,
realized.
and a lot of people think of that. Think in a very simple, moralistic way of looking at things. We'll say, "Oh, but I'm good over here, so I can be bad over there." That's not quite how the world works from the perspective of how we relate to Hashem.
We have to recognize the things that we do wrong.
That's right. That's right. It does not negate the fact that we have to do tshuva. I thought the rabbi's example the other day was a great one. I hadn't heard this before. He was talking about that if you lived in a house where you didn't have a mezuzah on every doorpost, then not only do you have to put a mezuzah on every doorpost, but you do technically have to do tshuva for the time when you didn't have it on your doorpost, for failing to fulfill a positive mitzvah. And I never heard it put in that way, and I thought that was really beautiful and really, bring
right to the point.
Exactly. It really brings home this idea that you can't look at the world as being balanced that way. It just doesn't work that way. All right, we're going to bring one more thing from the Parsha, and then we'll do a little
I
Tanya.
think get you sidetracked, but
No,
you don't have the
it's
whole
related. No,
Okay.
it's all good. It's all good. All right. So Rabbi Elimelech Lezhensk, not only does he say a couple great things about this judges and police, but he also is going to bring us into a great segue into the Tanya. So he says here that judges and police officers can be understood through a teaching in the Talmud in Brachos 61b that says tzaddikim are judged by their Yetzer HaTov and the wicked are judged by their Yetzer Hara. So what he's saying is that the righteous, their Yetzer HaTov, their good inclination, their the good voice, the angel on the one shoulder, is basically saying to them, even your good deeds weren't as good as they could have been. And a tzaddik takes that very deeply and works to improve himself. And an evil person is spoken to by their Yetzer Hara, and their Yetzer Hara does exactly the opposite. Their Yetzer Hara convinces them that their negative actions were actually positive. So fails to admonish them, fails to...
that they didn't do anything wrong.
That's right. They didn't do anything wrong to begin with. So the righteous do something great, and they still are criticized for it, and they take it well. They appreciate it. And the negative, the evil people don't do anything good, and they think they're the best. So this is part of what's referred to by the idea of judges and police, this duality. Now, where do we sit? We're the Beinonim, which is what this book is for. Remember, this is the Sefer Beinonim. They were the in-betweeners, as they call it. So we're the in-betweeners who walk on both paths at the same time, and we should always be striving to work on to be in both paths at the same time. So when we do a positive mitzvah, we should see, okay, we shouldn't look at ourselves as being so great and fantastic. We say, but there was more I could have done. And when we do something negative, we shouldn't look at ourselves and say, oh my gosh, what a terrible person I am. No, I made a mistake, and I want to do tshuva for it. I want to re-elevate myself for it. And then he goes on to talk about that this is another reason why it says appoint yourself judges and police officers, because the police officer is policing us as a people and preventing us from committing an offense to begin with. And so in this way, the police can basically can basically be like that Tzaddik Kimar all the time. The police can come along and say, "Hey, I'm catching you before you do a negative action, or before you think of yourself as somebody so great and so special, and I'm helping you find that level of balance, and allows you to continue to be the Benoni, the best Benoni that you can." And then lastly, he refers to the idea of the fact that it's Kol Sharecha, all of your gates, that it actually says that each mitzvah, here's what he says, every mitzvah and holy act has its own gate. When a person learns, prays, or does any other act of holiness in this world, he opens the gate to that specific mitzvah above, and therefore he gets the support of being on high. Okay, so I think that's a nice idea to transition us back in, like I said, into the Tanya, into the Sefer Beinonim, so we can continue to better understand how we sit in this world in our in-between spot. Okay.
Now, is it an oversimplification to say that the enforcer and the judges, the enforcer is more like the physical aspect, and the judges are more like the halachic spirit?
I didn't see exactly something like that. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but I did see. I know that's referred to tzedek. I was thinking about something else where it refers to two different kinds of. It refers to righteousness, tzedek tirdof. Righteousness shall you pursue. That's at least in part they're saying that's referring to both righteousness in this world and righteousness above. But that was not a reference back to police and judges. So I'm not saying it's not. It's just that's not something I came across. It's not what I came across when I was learning. So I can only tell you what I know.
Okay, well.
All right. So in the Tanya, we were learning this idea that that the Torah and all of its commandments, and goes along with three garments, and we were talking about these clothes, garments of the core of our soul, of our nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Garments, again, almost referring to like clothing that sits on our soul, and the value that they have, basically in elevating us, in helping us to connect to the positivity. And I think this is really where we left off. It says here in the Tanya, and the Zohar teaches that the Torah and God are totally one, meaning that the Torah, which is the wisdom and will of God, something that would seem to be a mere glimmer of the divine essence, is in fact completely one with God himself in all of his glory, because he is simultaneously the knower, the power to know, and the known, as explained above, citing Rambam. So this is the part that's talking about that what makes our positive soul so great. It's when we attach ourselves to a great Torah scholar. Because when we attach ourselves to a great Torah scholar, we attach ourselves directly to Torah. When we attach ourselves directly to Torah, we attach ourselves directly to Hashem. It says they're one and the same. So that's what in one way of looking at it makes one soul better than another, or makes one a leader, so to speak, that elevates the clothing that surrounds them to a higher level. All right, and then it continues. And while the Blessed One, the Blessed Holy One, is called throughout the Kabbalah as the Ein Sof, the Ein Sof refers to it translates as without end, which is right. The Ein Sof is like the infinite world. And his greatness can never be fathomed, and no thought can grasp him at all. And similarly, his will and his wisdom are also depicted as non-graspable, as the verse states, his understanding no one can fathom. And it is also written, can you through searching find God? And it is written, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. Nevertheless, God's infinitude and utter oneness is, in fact, perfectly consistent with the limited and detailed laws of the Torah. To explain this, it has been taught, in the same place that you find the greatness of God, there you will find his humility. Okay, so it's going over basically it's addressing the idea of how can we, just by connecting ourselves from a Torah scholar to Torah, be connected to an infinite being? And basically the Tanya is saying, don't worry, there's no inconsistency there. We're going to get to that. And part of the reason why it's saying that, it's quoting this verse, in the same place that you find the greatness of God, there you find his humility, is because it all exists in one place at the same time. His infinite greatness that then, in our way of looking at things, becomes limited, does not limit him,
Right.
nor does it limit our ability to connect to him. Okay, so we're going to continue. And the Blessed One has compacted his will and wisdom into the 613 commandments of the Torah and their associated laws, and into the texts of the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, as well as their commentaries in the Agadot and the Midrashim of the sages of blessed memory. This was in order that all the neshama or ruach and nefesh in your body should be able to mentally grasp these mitzvahs and sacred texts and to observe them as best as possible in action, speech, and thought, and thereby dress all the 10 powers of your soul in these 3 garments of action, speech, and thought, becoming totally one with God. So it's going to continue on in a minute, explaining a little bit more about this idea, but basically it's coming down to, this is the world that Hashem made for us to live in. And what does he use the word? He compacted. That's the word that the Baal HaTanya uses. He compacted all of his infinite glory into a representation in 613 mitzvot, into action, speech, and thought that we can then grasp and connect to. So it is a way by which we hold on to and we cleave to Hashem through the compacting that he did for us.
And observing the 613.
That's right. That's how we become one with him. I mean, the Baal HaTanya is trying to make this clear. There's no distinction between Torah and God. None. Okay, so the Tanya continues. Therefore, the Torah has been compared by the Talmud to water. For just as water has the tendency to flow from a higher level to a lower one, in a similar way the Torah has descended from its sublime setting in God's blessed will and wisdom, where the Torah and God are totally one, and no thought can grasp them at all. And from there, the Torah has journeyed downwards through the hidden places in the steps, unaffected by the step-by-step downward spiral of spiritual worlds, not suffering any dilution or diminishment at all, to the final point where God's will is dressed in physical objects and worldly concepts, which is the context of virtually all the Torah's commandments and their laws, as well as its sacred texts written in physical form, ink on parchment in the 24 books of the Tanakh. All this was in order that every mind should be able to grasp them, since even a simple person or a child can read the Tanakh, and even the outer garments of speech and action, which are more superficial than thought, should be able to grasp them and dress in them. So we can dress ourselves in Torah. That's what he's saying. Physical clothing, physical laws, physical being is there in order for you to clothe yourself in Tanakh. That's what it's there for. And again, these words, not suffering any dilution or diminishment at all. So again, we can think about water flowing downwards. The fact that it flowed downwards doesn't take anything away from the fact that its essence is still water. That's what it is. And it's the same for the Torah, and it's the same for God. Okay, and it continues. And since the Torah and its mitzvot provide a complete set of clothing for all 10 powers of your soul, and for all the soul's 613 subcomponents from head to foot, each of which find expression in a different mitzvah, it follows that through dressing in all this clothing, your soul becomes completely bound in the bundle of life with God, mamash. Again, we use this word literally. Literally. And it is the light of God literally that engulfs your soul, dressing her from head to foot. As the verse states, he is my rock in whom I take refuge. And as it is written, as with a shield the will of God surrounds him, referring to his blessed will and wisdom dressed in his Torah and its commandments. And again, this is not to be taken for granted, this idea that we've gone through a few times before, that the 613 commandments are split between the 365 positive commandments, which represent all the intricate muscles and sinews in our body, and the 248 negative commandments, which represent the bone segments of our body.
Isn't it the other way around?
I think 248 is
Positive.
365. I'm sorry. You're right. That part is
Right.
mixed around.
Yeah.
You're right. So the 248 positive,
Right.
which are the bone segments of
Right.
our body.
The other stuff
That's
is
right.
the
The 365 negative, which is all the muscles and sinews and other veins, whatever it is,
Right.
connecting portions of our body.
Right.
So that's why he's saying to each part, head to foot, all these connections, all the mitzvot, all the powers of our soul. Okay. Section 3, rethinking the afterlife. Ready for this?
Okay.
All right, perfect. I think we got just enough time for this, and then that's going to put us at the end of class for tonight. This explains why the Mishnah teaches better is 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world than all the life of the world that is coming. Because in the world that is coming, we enjoy the radiance of the divine presence, which refers to the pleasure of understanding God that was not possible for the soul while contained in a body. But it is impossible for any created entity, even a very lofty one, such as a disembodied soul, to grasp more than a glimmer of divine light. For this reason, the Talmud is careful to refer to the experience of the next world as basking in the mere radiance of the divine presence, and not the divine presence itself, which remains elusive. But with regard to God himself and his glory, no thought can grasp it at all, not even that of a disembodied soul in the next world. Except when you grasp him and are dressed in the Torah and its mitzvot, only then you literally grasp and are dressed in the Blessed One, holy be he, since the Torah and God are totally one. Okay, so what are we saying here? Normally, we look at life as seeing that we only get the slightest view of what God really is in this world, right? But in the world to come, we're going to see all the logic and reason behind everything. We're going to understand God. That is the
We'll
normal.
understand, but we won't see.
What's that?
We will understand, but we won't see.
That's right. And that's basically what this idea is teaching. It's flipping that whole thing on end. So even though that's true, that we will have an understanding, the understanding we have is of just the glimmer of light that we're actually going to be able to connect to. It's not the light itself. The light itself was placed in this world with us. And that's what, how did he describe the beginning of this chapter? Rethinking the afterlife. That's the rethinking of. It's a complete reversal of the traditional model. All right, he goes on, the Tanya goes on to say, for although the Torah is immersed in mundane physical things through which the mitzvot are observed, this can be compared to hugging a human king, where there is no difference in the level of closeness and bonding achieved by the embrace, whether you hug him while he is dressed in one robe or dressed in several robes, since the king himself is inside them. All right, so now we're back again to this idea of clothing, right? So basically, everything that is God's essence is dressed in the Torah and the mitzvot, is dressed by the world as we see it. And the Baal HaTanya refers to this as mundane, physical. It seems like, where's the godliness here? That's all this is. This is all godliness. This is all how the Torah is dressed so that we can relate to God on the highest level possible. And again, even in one way of looking at things, an even higher level than we'll be able to relate to him in the world to come. Okay, and it continues. Also, the same is true in the reverse. When the king initiates the embrace, offering a hug with his arm, even though it is garbed in his robes, it does not affect the quality of the connection. As the verse states, and his right hand embraces me. meaning the Torah which was given by God's right hand, which is symbolic of benevolence, chesed. God's willingness to dress his infinite self in finite garments is in our benefit. And water, alluding to the idea that God's presence was not diminished by the worldly garbing of the Torah mitzvot, just as water remains the same after it flows from a higher place to a lower one. Okay, now, he doesn't mention this here. I don't know if he mentions it later, but water is also, most of the time, is considered also chesed. We need water to live, right? So this whole idea of water and God's right hand and Torah, which was given by his right hand, it all comes from the same place. It all comes from this idea of benevolence, of giving, of mercy, of kindness, of love. And when we think about that, like, you know, if the king goes to hug us with his right arm, that hug is initiated by him. It's the king.
Right.
It doesn't really matter that it was his right arm. The right arm is just the way by which we connect to him. It was the king who initiated the hug. The king's thoughts and
The king
feelings.
is wrapped up in
That's
his garments.
that's right. The
Just
king.
like Hashem is wrapped up in the Torah.
That's right.
I mean, is that an oversimplification?
Well,
His teaching.
I think you can see it all at the same time. So you can see Hashem is wrapped up in these garments, but it doesn't change the quality of the hug.
Right.
Hashem is initiating the hug with, let's say, his right arm, with his Torah. He's initiating the hug with his Torah.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that he initiated the hug.
Right.
Just like it doesn't change in those two aspects, it doesn't change that a king who hugs you with 20 garments on, there's still the king inside.
Like, still being hugged by the king.
That's right. And the king who's hugging you with his right arm, it doesn't change the fact that the king was the one who reached out to you. It was the king's essence that reached out to you. It was just manifest by the fact that his right arm is what went around you. And so from that standpoint, it doesn't matter. This is the place where we connect to Hashem on the highest level possible. And that's what we're going to keep in mind when we continue the next chapter. Okay. Chapter 5 is called Total Immersion in the Divine. And we're going to start with an unparalleled unity with God. And I think that's where we'll leave it off.